Is everyone able to see? Heather, can you just give me a confirmation on the visual?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Looks fantastic.
Awesome, thanks. So my name is Adrienne Mansfield. I am the co-founder of the results agency, the ADage Marketing Group. And today we're going to talk about how you can take the things that you know about your prospects and turn them into actionable insights that are going to increase census. So we're going to move forward, focusing on really being curious about not just the value that you already believe that you bring to your prospects' lives, but being open to the idea that they might have a different perspective of that, and that can shift your strategy, but ultimately be a competitive win. So starting off with the process, when we get engaged with a new client, one of the first things we do is help them to identify who their customer is. Because once we understand what the customer values, we're able to tell the brand story in a way that is cohesive and in alignment with what they want to hear. So from a high level, we'll take a data-driven approach and identify who those marketing qualified leads are. So in this case, those typical things about age, income, home value that are used to kind of segment within a larger primary market area, those individuals who would be most likely to move in. But you can take that one step further, and we do that using historical resident data. And we do a deeper level analysis that allows us to understand a little bit more about their attitudes and their decision-making. Also, those that are in most alignment to the types of individuals who have already moved into the community are then targeted as sales qualified leads. So we create a composite of the most common type of individual based on attitudes, behaviors, and other data points within the data set from the resident historical data. And we create a composite, and in this case, we're going to call her Betty. And Betty gives us some very insightful information about how to approach her. So she is not interested in new adventures. She is risk averse, but she's easy to reach using traditional media approach. So that's good to know. We'll remember that later. So running through a scenario where Betty receives let's say community A is our client. She receives their direct mail piece for a December event for a happy hour from 4 to 7. We're located in Pennsylvania. Right? So her first thought in seeing something from a senior living community might be, senior living, I still feel young, with the understanding that she's aware there are some things that she's not capable of doing anymore. And even if that leaves her with a little bit of curiosity, her next thought is the weather being bad. So here we've identified some thoughts, we've identified some feelings, and where would she take this information, these feelings and these thoughts? Who would she share them with? She's likely, based on her persona, to talk to friends, attend church, and spend time with her family. So now, when you visit our booth on the Whova app, we have 2 complimentary downloads, and they're DIY tools that we usually walk through with our clients, and we're sharing them with you today. We don't have time to do the entire process, but we've just done one segment of it. We've walked through the awareness stage. In this case, Betty is now aware that our community A exists and has some thoughts, feelings, and actions around it. One of the things that we're able to do, utilizing the second tool available for download, our customer journey tool, is to identify where her pain point is, what would be the obstacle for moving her forward, where the salesperson could help advance that process, or marketing program could help advance that process, and the best way to deliver that message, meaning where is her attention. And you're able to use both tools together to put this all the way through from the awareness stage to when she is evaluating the alternatives, the anticipation stage or planning, taking action, and ultimately, we talk a lot about advocacy because it's essential that we create an environment where resident referrals are an ongoing source of leads. So we've gone over who our target audience is, and we know what they value, right? This would normally be where communities would start talking about their brand and how it matches and everything that's important based on what they believe about their brand. but we have to take a step back, and I'm using a quote here by one of my favorite heroes, Simon Sinek, to understand that it's about Betty's perceived value of your brand. So why would Betty, as she moves into the evaluation of alternative stage, why would she consider community A over community B? Likely because there's a social value to community A that perhaps community B doesn't have. Social being one of her value decision points. So one of the things we're going to do is be careful about how we tell our story. But the most important part is telling the story itself. So as we prepare to do that, which we're going to do in part 2, I want to just reinforce how important storytelling is as a conduit for your organization to get the message out there and generate prospects and generate move-ins and build census. Storytelling is timeless. It's literally wired into our brains. They've done a ton of research around it. But more importantly, as I mentioned about resident referrals, a good story gets told again. And when you take control of your story and you humanize your brand, you then are able to generate empathy and solidify the relationship building you need for this sales process from a marketing angle. So we're about halfway through our content for today. And I just want to remind everyone there is going to be time at the end for questions, but also if there are any questions afterwards or you want to deep dive into any of these topics, we can do that at the booth during the expo. Okay, so developing resident messaging for your prospect audience, we have to start with the concept of capturing their attention, evoking their emotion, and compelling action. In order to do that, in a really clear example, I'm going to share 3 words. I'm not going to share the actual thing itself, but Sarah McLachlan and the SPCA. So I think almost everyone immediately starts to hear that music playing in their head and the visual that comes with it. It's very emotionally evoking. And as soon as you hear it from wherever you are, it captures your attention. And even if it's just to grab the remote, ultimately, they've done a great job of compelling action, right? So when we start to develop marketing messaging, those are the things that we take into consideration for each of our target personas. So we mentioned earlier about the entry point of that direct mail piece. That's our first touch point in the marketing campaign. In this case, that exposure ultimately led her, Betty, to RSVP. If that's the case, then what can we do on the marketing side and the sales side in an aligned way to move her forward through the process? So here, as an example, maybe the salesperson would reach out with a really exciting creative follow-up, something that she specifically mentioned during her RSVP discussion. It could be that her email is dropped into a marketing automation campaign where she's educated about what community A offers versus community B, also what community A offers in comparison to staying home, which is going to move her through the sales process as well and the evaluation of alternatives. And ultimately, perhaps it's the coordination of a resident calling to personally remind her to come to the event that evening and give her that encouragement. So the end game, when you know your prospect, when you know what matters to them, you're able to deliver messages in a way that they're able to receive them and advance themselves forward. So here, I mentioned touch points in the previous slide. We know a little bit about Betty from our persona, and that is that she prefers offline tactics. That's not to say, though, that she doesn't spend time online and that it doesn't benefit you to reinforce those messages online and offline. So when people talk about integrated marketing, those are really those tactics like the IP append direct mail piece, where someone has visited your website and then navigated away, but you've tracked their pixel and are able to send them an offline piece. You can connect your print advertising to retargeting. So there's a lot of ways to 30,000 feet up, connect with your prospect over and over again. And again, we can talk about any of these in deeper dive. So what I've shared so far is a pretty tall order. We've talked about why your brand is going to resonate with a prospect, and also why it is that you have to be speaking about the value points that you offer in a contextual story. Always, if possible, with like demonstrable examples of how you have changed the lives of your residents. In addition, though, that's that first step of understanding who we're talking to and what to say. The second step, though, is the relationship itself. So if we really invested in stage one, we move forward to stage two, and the understanding that sales is a relationship business. Marketing is a relationship building business, and what the communities are delivering is a relationship focused business. So success in any of those areas requires understanding connection. And I'm going to leave off, since I told you storytelling was so important, I'm going to leave off with a story. One of the most common questions that I get from sales and marketing teams is, when is a lead cold? When do I stop calling? When do I take them off the email list or the mail list? And based on step two, and relationships are relationships, I tease them with an adage and say, well, heaven or hell? And they inquire. And until your resident or until your prospect goes to heaven, or they tell you to go to hell, you keep moving forward as though that was your best friend and they were struggling with putting their mom in an assisted living community or helping their dad move into a dementia community. And you call as often as you would if it was your best friend, with the same warmth and intention and integrity for helping them move towards the best solution for them. So staying gritty and not giving up will differentiate you from your competitors. You know, they might take 3 phone calls and call it a lost lead, but it's the person who stays in the long game that really wins. So as I said, if you have any other questions, you can visit our booth. I'll be available to answer questions today and tomorrow, or you can email. There was also a poll for today's call that I'm going to share.